So in a span of 24 hours, from a healthy kid, I was transformed into a log where nothing below my neck was moving. It was only my eyes that I could move, look around, and I could hear. And I was mentally alert. All through this, I knew what was going on with me.
So today we are going to speak to someone who is the practical sort of embodiment of resilience. Someone who has had to overcome sudden adversity multiple times in life and having to literally rewire herself against great odds, not once but again and again.
This is the CTQ Smartcast, where we have conversations about up-leveling, deliberate practice, and getting future relevant.
Right, welcome everyone to the Choose to Think Smartcast. It has been months since all of us have been in this very surreal environment of lockdowns and isolation. Obviously, no one saw it coming. Life changed for us overnight. And slowly, as we came to terms with it, we are grappled by problems that we have no really training or no answers for. Everyone's got their own problems. Will my job stay? Will my occupation stay relevant? How do I pay my bills? How do I repay my loans? And how do I do all this while taking care of the young, of the old, and with no social support in a time of financial uncertainty, and yet stay sane, healthy, and optimistic at the same time? But if this is a bleak start you feel, just hold your heart because we have some answers that you might find interesting. So here's introducing you to Sirisha, who is one remarkable person you will meet. She works as a consultant, helping corporates grow to 10x by building the right culture. She's a graduate of IIMA. She's a Fulbright scholar, having studied at Stanford and Carnegie Mellon. And over 2 decades, she has been helping complexly large organizations and teams in management and learning. And following her motto of obviously coaching individuals to be the best that they can be. But this is just about the work that she can do. In person, she is the all-smiling, radiant, eternal optimist whom you would always find naturally drawn towards, even if you don't know her too well. Be with her for a few minutes and you will think that everything is so easy and so effortless. So it really came as a shock a few days ago when I had to research on her life story. It was so surreal and so disconnected from the Sirisha that I had come to know that we just knew that we had to bring her story to you, especially in these times when you need all the help you can to deal with adversity and to learn how to make changes in your life on the fly. So Sirisha, welcome to the CTQ Smartcast.
Thank you, Sanasi.
We know you at Choose to Think, of course, as the one with the most incredible work ethic and who can count on to get the job done.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We begin your story basically when you were just 13 years old. Till then, it had been sort of a smooth enough ride. You were a fun kid who loved academics, who loved sports, and was so confident of becoming a neurosurgeon that you would sign your name as Dr. Sirisha, FRCS, London.
Yeah, so I should probably say I had a very exciting childhood, in the sense that until I was 13, my worldview was my school and my cycle, and I also used to play the veena. So that was my worldview of things, and I was like any other happy teenager. And until one day, all of a sudden, I was feeling very unwell. I'm not the kinds who would ever want to miss school, but ended up staying back at home for a couple of days because of severe fever and acute body ache. And in a couple of days, suddenly I realized, I woke up and I realized I couldn't lift my left hand. And I was always a natural left-hander. So we thought maybe I slipped on that hand or something was wrong. So they took me to the hospital. Within 6 hours, I could move a part of my right hand also. Things looked serious. So my parents quickly took me to a bigger hospital, a super specialty hospital. And there they said they want to get some tests done, some x-rays done. So I stood up, sat in the wheelchair, went to the x-ray room. And I stood up to get the x-ray done and just collapsed. it took us probably a few minutes to realize that everything below my, even my back and my legs got completely paralyzed by then. So in a span of 24 hours, from a healthy kid, I was transformed into a log where nothing below my neck was moving. It was only my eyes that I could move, look around, and I could hear. And I was mentally alert all through this. I knew what was going on with me.
And that's just crazy because, I mean, even to hear it and even to go through it as you experience it, you know that it can't, I mean, it must be one of the biggest shocks. And no one knew back then, but what he had been struck with was spinal meningitis, which can happen to anyone, really. And
Yeah.
something that can cause severe brain damage, if not death, in the first 24 hours itself.
Yeah, right. So, in fact, it was very strange the way it came, and because meningitis apparently takes little, it's not that fast in the way it appears, and there could be other symptoms, and it always starts from the bottom. So, there were all kinds of guesses that were done at that time. But uh, what seemed closer was spinal meningitis, and like you were mentioning, right, it could result in brain damage, or bigger risk is respiratory failure. So that's when they immediately rushed me to the ICU, and 2 months I was put in the ICU, with literally nobody, my parents being around, and probably half an hour in a day, an hour in a day, they would let my friends and other members of the family come and visit me. So that was 2 months in the ICU, with all ventilators and everything ready to be connected to me at any point in time, in case I had some breathing issues. But luckily, 2 months, nothing further happened. So I was in the same state. There was no change. I couldn't move anything below my neck, and but at the same time, I didn't develop any kind of breathing disorder or didn't have any kind of brain damage. So that's when the doctors came to my parents and said, look, we can shift her to her room if you want, because there's good news and bad news. Good news is brain didn't get damaged, no respiratory failure, so she's alive. Otherwise, apparently later my parents told me that when I was wheeled into the ICU itself, they've all through the 2 months, in fact, they've been telling them that there's barely any chance of me surviving. So that was the good news, right? That I was alive. The
Right.
bad news was they said nothing can be done. The damage is irreversible uh, because of the way it got affected. So she lives like this the rest of her life. So basically, she won't be able to move, and you need to care for her, take care of her. And the only thing that they suggested then was, keep moving her hands and legs so that, that stiffness and other things don't set in, and, I don't develop bed sores and other things because I'm lying on the bed all through the day. So that's what the doctors had pronounced.
Right. And as I know, because I've read about you a few days ago, that this was just one of the many major setbacks that you were about to face time and time again. But before we get to those, do you remember what helped you in those moments when you were faced with that choice of either taking the doctor's opinion and just doing the bare minimum that you needed to do to prevent those bed sores, or to just follow the fate that had been laid out for you, versus what your parents actually did, which was to choose to fight?
Yeah, so I don't remember at that point what I did, because it was mostly what uh, it was mostly what my parents, my brother, were telling me and doing. So at that time, we came back home. It was a shock, but it was not like my parents didn't accept what the doctor said. They said the problem is serious. We got to figure it out. Uh, but they said, let's fight it out. There's no harm in you doing exercising. And my father was a sports person all through his student days, and he used to do a lot of weightlifting, and he also was a pole vault champion in the university then. So that's when my father said, we'll exercise. There's nothing wrong in exercising. Instead of doing just the little, we try doing what best we can. And in fact, I remember and exercising was extremely painful. My body was always in pain. And even the very fact that somebody comes, so status quo, if I was just sleeping on the bed also, it was hurting, and somebody coming and touching and moving it was enormous amount of pain. And so exercise obviously was not the preferred option for me. But then my father, knowing me, my father said he's not going to buy me a wheelchair. Said the moment you get a wheelchair home, you're going to get very comfortable with it. So we're not going to buy a wheelchair. And he offered to actually carry me everywhere.
I see.
Sit till the time I'm sure you'll be able to sit and get back to your feet. But till the time you do that, I'm going to carry you everywhere. And this, imagine with all the medication that I was given, right? My weight increased from something like 40 kilos to 100 kilos. Right. In those 2 months because I was just pumped with steroids.
Correct.
And so 100 kilos, and he said, I'll take you everywhere. And he started lifting me. So that actually triggered, that thought of wanting to exercise and get back to myself. Because you always don't want somebody to take you everywhere, and you don't want to be dependent on them. Probably at that point, had my parents given up and got me a wheelchair, things would have been very different.
Wow. It's amazing sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just saying things would have been very different. So I think it's all about deciding what to do. But at the same time, at every point, they were saying that, look, this is what it is. We are doing our best. We'll all work towards it, do our best. In fact, to an extent that I was exercising almost 8 hours a day. And at no point was my expectations too high. They ensured that, they ensured that I knew it is not going to be a magical transformation. It's going to be a journey, a very, very hard one. But there is a possibility of me getting there, because it's all about building that strength back and getting my legs to move. So that's when I had those slight trigger movements in my toes. And that's when they said, let's keep moving. Maybe, one day that trigger in the nerves will again start. So they didn't let go of the fact that this is they accepted the problem. They knew how serious it was. They kept talking to me about it. They were always very transparent, clear, didn't give me any false hopes. We were having a lot of candid conversations at home. But they made sure that I pushed myself. And I think the entire environment set up around me was where everybody was pushing me to do my best.
Wow. So we have this incredibly arduous journey of clawing back to a semblance of a normal life, where you learned how to sit first, then to stand, then to walk one step. And it took you 2 years to hold a pencil in your hand. And from there, you went on to top the 12th standard boards. How did you manage to pull that one out?
So it was a lot of work. I think I had to spend twice the time because I wanted to study. So initially, after I got sick, for the first 8-9 months, but I was always doing well at school, so my school promoted me. So that period of 8 months I had before the next academic year started, that I could work on my body. So my father set a goal for me, saying, in 8 months we'll make sure you are at least able to sit, so that you are able to start going to the school. And that's when a lot of exercise. Finally, I remember when I started sitting, it was like sitting for 5 seconds, 10 seconds before I collapsed, and then 15 seconds. So we were actually timing how much time I could sit. So with a lot of exercise, making attempts to stand and all, in 8 months, I got to a stage where I could sit. But sitting for 7-8 hours was difficult. So then we got a custom chair built with lots of cushions and everything around, which could support my body. And then again came the choice of, okay, do I miss an academic year, or do I, go back to school? I wanted to go back to school. I desperately wanted to go back to school. My parents were worried that I would not focus on my exercise if I start going back to school. So the deal was, I can go back to school, provided I come back and work out for 4 hours every day.
I see.
So my father used to carry me to school, put me in the class, and obviously I couldn't write or anything. enormous amount of support from my teachers, friends in school. Anybody who would finish their notes first would start writing notes for me. And the teachers, if I wasn't understanding anything, there was something that they could help me out with, they would all do that, especially in practicals and everything. They would make sure, everybody made sure I was as comfortable as possible in school. And I had a good grasping capacity. So just by listening to teachers in the class, I could understand most of the lessons, because I had very little time to go back home and study, because immediately after school at 4, my dad used to take me directly to exercise. We used to go to the university to walk around and move around and practice, do all kinds of exercises for us. And I would come back home only around 8:30. By then I would be dead tired, wouldn't have had any time to study later. But I think my interest or keenness in academics actually helped me get back to my studies. And of course, all of this wouldn't have been possible without all the support that I got from my brother, my parents, my teachers and friends at school. And then slowly I started learning, being able to hold a pencil with my right hand. And I was a natural left-hander, right? So I had to learn, and my left hand wasn't moving, because that was the first affected. They said it was the most affected. So I started learning to write with my right hand. And it took me a long time to actually get back to my writing speed. So the school provided me with writers for my exams. And I think I still remember the celebration we had when I could, when I stood first in my class again. And we also had an equally big celebration when I could walk my first few steps on my own. So in a way, it was both things happening in parallel. It was, very few people probably get to witness their childhood and remember every single step that they've taken or all the falls, right? So I got a chance to see all of that.
But I think that's pretty cool, that having these small goals which you can achieve and then really celebrating those achievements was something that really pushed you on.
Yeah, that was primary motivation. The small goals, getting to those. We had an incredibly big goal in mind, but the easiest way was setting those smaller goals and milestones for myself. And yeah, so that's how continued this all the way till my 12th. And yeah, topping it was one of the best things that could have happened to me that time.
And so you got into, you always wanted to become a doctor. So you got into the medical college of your dreams to find yourself back on track to becoming the doctor that you always wanted to. But then that wasn't the end of it. You were told that you weren't fit enough to become a doctor because you couldn't operate your left hand, which was required for the mandatory surgery paper.
Yeah. So this is actually, when I look back, it seemed funny, strange, because after 10th, we actually had to pick the subjects that we wanted to study depending on the stream we wanted to go into. At that time, while I always, when I started exercising and getting back, there was some semblance of normalcy. I rekindled my dreams of becoming a doctor again. The academic part, medical entrance was always known to be very, very tough and all of that. So the academic rigor that was needed, I was confident I would be able to manage. But I wasn't sure if I'll be allowed to be a doctor because my left hand was not functioning and my right hand was partially functioning. So that's when we actually went and took professional advice from professors in medical colleges, saying, can I really become a doctor? And all of them gave a unanimous answer that I could become a doctor, but I can't become a surgeon. I wouldn't be eligible to take anything around surgery, but I could always become a physician. So immediately, the kid that I was, when I was my 4th and 5th standards, I used to remember signing off my name as Sirisha FRCS London. I immediately very easily changed it to Sirisha FRCS London. Okay, so and I was pretty confident I could do it. Worked really hard, very, very hard those 2 years, because I also had to manage my exercises. By then, I could walk. I could walk on my own, and I could walk up to around 7-8 kilometers at a stretch. So I could stand for long periods of time, and I could do everything with my right hand. I could manage all my daily chores with my right hand. So that took a lot of hard work. I got a good rank in the medical entrance, which could have got me admission into one of the very good medical colleges back in Hyderabad. As part of the admission process, there was a medical examination that I had to go through. It was a routine procedure. All students had to go through that. So I underwent the medical examination, and I get the letter the next day saying I'm denied admission. So it was shocking. We went to find out what happened, and the authority said that from that year, surgery was made compulsory as a compulsory subject in the first year.
Oh.
And they said if you couldn't do it, and it's mandatory that you clear your first year, everything in your first year before you can move ahead. So they said, since you can't do it, you can't join the course. For them, it was a very, very simple, factual, objective statement, but it was earth-shattering for me, because it said it was like, it's my dreams, and I could actually see somebody taking away my dreams from me. And then we wanted to figure out what was needed. They said I could go and appeal to the Medical Council of India. So we did that. We had to go to a different city to do that. We did that. And there also we got the same response. They said, since it's a rule, we cannot give you any exemption from it. So it was literally, I was begging the officials saying, can you do something? Can you help me in some way? But their decision was very, very clear. And that, I think, was probably one of the few times where I was totally depressed. And that was probably one of the first times I started asking, why me?
But then you obviously chose to look at the things that were available to you. So just take us through that, how you forced yourself to look at the windows that were open rather than the doors that were being shut.
Yeah. So all this drama of wallowing in self-pity, when I look back, wallowing in self-pity went on for quite some time. For 2-3 months, I was totally off. And I said, this is the end, and I really can't do anything more. And the world is being very unfair to me, kind of thing. After a few days, probably, I think it was time for me to make a choice, right? I knew I had to move on. And that's when it was a choice. The options I had in front of me was humanities, arts, and BCA. So BCA, Bachelor's in Computer Applications, that was the first year that course started. And between the medical entrance examination and the actual admission process, I had like good 4 months. Usually some of these get very delayed. So I had like 4.5 months with me. So I generally went and wrote this entrance, and I got a good rank. So, but now it was 6 months into the course. And because I got the admission, then the actual college had started, and then the medical examination, and then my admission was denied. Then all my appeals to NCI, Medical Council of India, and then all of this took about 6.5 months of time. And in December that year, that was the last phase of counseling that was possible for BCA, and I said, okay, I'll go for it. While I started college, the first few days I didn't enjoy it. I never wanted to be a part of it, didn't want to go to the college. But if I look back, I think during that entire period, while my parents empathized with me a lot about what my brother, they were, they aware of what I was going through. They agreed that, I had the right to feel bad. But they always kept telling me that, you always have two choices. You wallow in self-pity and stay where you are, or you move on. Pick up and move on. So that's how, and a bunch of other things happened. And then I said, okay, let me start studying. And that's when I had to rewire myself again, because, computers was not a subject that I ever imagined I would study. And the challenge was my left hand was not functioning. So I had to type with a single hand. And I had 4 months before my university exams. So that was as tough as it could get, because there were 8 subjects that I had to study, except English, which was one of the subjects. The other 7 I had no clue of what they were. Didn't even understand the basics of programming. At that time, programming and other things were also not commonly taught in school. So had no clue. And but then I decided I had to pick up. one thing I realized is probably over all the experiences that I had until that time, if I made up my mind to do something, it was easy for me to create a plan for myself and start studying. So that's how I started studying for my BCA and did very well those 3 years. I topped the university, and then again was a point of decision where it was a choice of whether I continue in the computer science field or whether I move to management. And management was something that I found interesting, always intrigued me. So that's when I decided to write the CAT, the common admission test that is written for getting into most of the B schools in India.
Right. And that's the remarkable thing, that you just choose to do the CAT and get into management, and you manage to get calls from all IIMs except one. And then you go on to choose IIM Ahmedabad. Eventually you met your husband there, got married, had the first of 2 kids. And down the line, you met a surgeon who showed you a bright ray of hope, that an experimental surgery that could revitalize your left hand, which had been immobile all these years. So you make that another big decision of going under the knife, which is a big step to take because you're changing your status quo massively. And it's a risky one. And then it doesn't work out. Not like the previous ones, you somehow managed to clear the hurdle in your own way. But this one set you back, at least physically. So what did you go through during this change?
Yeah, so this was a very interesting phase because until then things happened to me, right? This was when I got something onto myself, especially in terms of my health, right? So exercising was all, it was like a given thing for me is a given thing for me for the rest of my life. Constantly exercising and making sure I'm staying fit. So a couple of years after after my first kid was born, I was working out. I used to go to a gym, and that's when I met a doctor who was a brachial plexus surgeon. So simply put, what he does is, if someone loses mobility in one hand, right, anywhere in the upper body because of a fall or an accident or whatever, usually when people climb trees and fall down, they end up paralyzing their hand. So what he does is he takes muscles from other parts of the body, muscles which are stronger, and places them in the part that is not functioning and does all the nerve connections. And then the hand starts working, simply because the nerves are still sending the messages, and you have a working muscle there. So with a minimal amount of physiotherapy, your body adapts to it and it starts working. And apparently there are a lot of places in the human body where you have extra muscles compensating the other muscles. So there was no harm picking one muscle. So this is how, it was, this what in a layman's terms the doctor explained to me. And he said, even in your case, I'm 200% confident that it's going to work. So let's go for it. So I did all the research, and for me, this was very tempting, right? Because by then I came to accept that, my left hand is not working, and that's how it's going to be. But I was figuring out how best I do what I can do with one working hand, which is partially working, and my legs, which are decently working. I could manage everything on my own. So that I say it was tempting because, again, it was a new ray of hope, right? Maybe both my hands are going to be working again. So why not take that call? Purely my decision. I agreed to go under the knife. So the plan was, in my legs also, my right leg was reasonably stronger. So they said they'll pick one muscle from my right thigh and put it in my left hand. And it was a 12-hour surgery. And they said after the surgery, 48 hours will put you under observation. If 48 hours nothing happens, then the surgery is successful. So 48 hours went by. I was perfectly fine, no pain whatsoever. My hand and everything was completely plastered. And they said, good, surgery was successful. In fact, the doctor had left for doing another surgery in Bombay. Around after 72 hours, I started having severe pain in my hand. And that was not a good sign. So they cut the plaster open and they saw that my left hand was turning blue. That was scary. They said, your body is rejecting the muscle. There's some sepsis setting in there. So we need to put you under the knife again to take out the muscle. and set back all your connections so that you don't lose your sensory part, and the blood flow and everything else is normal. So again, I went through a surgery. This time it was a longer one, a 16-hour one, because they had to undo a lot of things and redo a lot of things. So yeah, so and because my right leg was cut, it was again very difficult for me to walk. So I had to again learn to balance weight on both the legs and all of that. So in short, what happened, outcome of this was I ended up with a muscle lesser in my leg, a muscle lesser in my hand, and a lot of scars on my hand, all over, and my chest, because of all the cuts that they had done. Again, lot of emotional draining piece, because I went through enormous amount of pain, bouts of pain again. So this created a condition where my body was psychologically, even the slightest of things, my body was perceiving it as severe pain. And it took me even longer to get back to my strength levels. But when I look back, because it was my decision, right? Do I have any regrets for having made that decision? Or while this real surgery failed, did it really fail? I don't think so, because for me, this gotten it makes me much stronger, because one, I know that I had shown the courage to try, and it also taught me that I could try anything, and try as many times as I want, even if I fail. So that at times when I encounter situations where I fail at something and I have to restart the entire process, when I think of this, then it seems to me that, yeah, that's okay. You fail and you try again. So that's what life is all about.
That was Sirisha's extraordinary journey. In part 2 of this interview, we pick her brain for tips on how to develop the skills and mindset to be resilient and ready for whatever comes our way. See you then in part 2.
This is the CTQ Smartcast, where we have conversations about up-leveling, deliberate practice, and getting future relevant.